Hardy Boys fans readily agree that Cave Trap is one of the worst Hardy Boys books ever written. It's so bad, people say that the author is the culprit, and the crime is attempting to kill readers through sheer boredom. As soon as I heard this, I made it a point to buy the book immediately.
Argofunk Book Review, Argofunk Book Review.
The Hardy Boys are in Kentucky, where they get stopped by a group of protesters. The protesters are upset over the murder of activist Marvin West. The murderer hit Marvin with a car and ran him over multiple times. Interesting, right? Are the Hardy Boys here to solve the murder? No, of course not. They are here to explore a cave. Outside of the first chapter, the murder is only mentioned once, and it never gets solved. I don't understand the logic behind this. Why bring the Hardy Boys to a murder scene if they're not going to find the murderer? It's just weird and pointless. Which is basically how this book works. The cave that they're exploring is near a fictional state park. Both the government and a coal company are interested in buying the land. According to Mr. Hardy, one of the people on the expedition is a secret spy for the coal company. The Hardys have to figure out who the spy is. The Find the Spy storyline could have been interesting, but it's not. Why? Besides for the group leader, there are only two other people on the team. One is Debbie, the seasoned park ranger, and the other is Spencer Lugo, the poor college student who asks lots of questions about the land's ownership. Gee, I wonder which one of them is the coal company's spy. The cave belongs to the McCall family. Right off the bat, the Hardys meet Buddy McCall, an angry man who shoots Frank's backpack. The Hardys fight with Buddy for a bit until he remembers they have permission to be here. He gives them a sheepish apology. Spencer leads the Hardys into the cave and he gives them a lecture on cave gear. One tool they use for cave exploring is a seismograph, which registers sonic images and lets them see rock structures below them at a distance of 50 feet. The other cave exploring tool is a shotgun. Sounds like a legitimate cave tool to me! Spencer shoots the ground with a shotgun, which causes a 15-foot hole to open up right underneath Joe. Poor Joe, standing in the worst place possible. The hole leads to a giant cave, which everyone decides to explore. The next day, we meet Dirk McCall, Buddy's even more violent brother. Dirk wants to sell the land to the coal company as soon as possible. The two brothers go into murder mode. They beat each other up with a knife and a tire iron. Debbie says visiting hospitals is not the country way, so she sews up their wounds with a needle and thread. Yikes, remind me never to get injured in Kentucky. The story finally starts in Chapter 7, when our heroes explore the cave. Dirk demands to be part of the expedition. Everyone knows this is a bad idea. They really shouldn't bring the crazy violent man along, but they let him go anyway because no real reason. We have 15 full pages of cave exploration here, and this is the reason why people dislike the book. It is super boring. Our heroes travel down 750 feet, and they make a marker trail for 30 minutes. They find a honeycomb wall and crawl through a tunnel for another 30 minutes. They end up in another cave where they take thorough measurements. Our heroes find some human skeletons. These are the remains of readers who couldn't make it past this point in the book. I mean, these are ancient skeletons which are on rock ledges. They find coal in the ceiling of the cave, and Dirk goes back to murder mode. He throws Debbie into a sinkhole, and he starts a brawl when Joe accuses him of foul play. During the brawl, Spencer smashes against the wall with ledges. The rocks fall down on his legs and trap him. Hence the title of the book, Cave Trap. Dirk pulls out a gun and he goes after the Hardys. Why didn't he use this gun in the earlier fights? I don't know. He hits Joe with the gun and throws him into a sinkhole. He shoots at Frank and Frank falls into the river. Frank wakes up a minute and a half later inside the state park. He was saved by a conveniently located park ranger. Frank contacts the proper authorities and he brings a bunch of police officers to arrest Dirk. Note that this should be the end of the book, but we've got 5 more chapters. Yay. Joe wakes up inside a pit next to Debbie. He helps mend her injuries, and he takes her back to the main cave. They pretend to be avenging ghosts in order to scare Spencer, and there's another fight with Dirk. Meanwhile, Frank and Buddy enter the cave system, and they use a car jack to get the rocks off of Spencer. Dirk steals a gun, because he lost his other gun, and he tries to escape. In the ensuing fight, Dirk falls into the river and drowns. In the final chapter, we wrap things up. Buddy decides to become a park ranger. Joe flirts with Debbie for the first and only time, and everybody decides to call the new tunnel Hardy Passage. The end. Post-book follow-up, this book is not good. It's boring, the story doesn't start until halfway through, and the end of the book is stretched out by at least 3 chapters. By some counts, the actual storyline takes up less than a third of the book. I can totally understand why people say it's a long and boring story. The actual mystery is bad. The subplot about the murder never gets resolved, and it's obvious that the angry guy who keeps starting fights is the culprit. The subplot about Spencer being a coal company spy went nowhere because he gets trapped under a rock at the start of the expedition and he doesn't move for the rest of the story. We know some of the books in this series were so awful that the publisher sent the completed manuscripts to other authors telling them to improve the story. That might have happened with this book. At the very least, if this book had 2 authors, it would explain why the first and second halves of the book are so radically different. On an odd note, this book was released in the United Kingdom as the 8th book in the Undercover Brothers series. The series was cancelled in the UK after this book was published, which gives you an idea of how popular it is. The book is not a total loss, though. It has a bunch of fistfights, like several other books in the series, so if you're into fistfights and you can ignore the story, it's possible you can enjoy this book. Some people have. Me, there were 2 places where I was so bored, I would have stopped reading the book entirely if I wasn't doing a Hardy Boys review series. That, and the general consensus of Hardy Boys fans, makes me feel justified in giving a Hardy Boys Casefiles number 115, Cave Trap, a 0 out of 10.